The UNWTO election in 2017 just made Alain St.Ange a millionaire. A large part of the world is unified in understanding the UNWTO election for Secretary in 2017 did not conclude the way it should have. Fraud, corruption, irregularities and much more was reported during the process, securing the current position for UNWTO Secretary-General Zarab Polilikashvili. One of the candidates competing for the post at that time was Mr. Alain St.Ange. He did not take what happened to him as a given. 4 years later, the highest appeal court in his native Seychelles awarded him 7 million Seychelles rupees or approximately $526,000 in damages this Thursday. Many in the world now ask how UNWTO would have progressed through this COVID crisis with a different leader in charge. The UNWTO for sure would be more transparent, media-friendly, and open to the private sector and all member governments of the UN-affiliated agency. St.Ange filed a lawsuit in Seychelles in October 2017 after he was disqualified by his own government to stand in the UNWTO election. It happened 2 days before the election during the UNWTO Executive Council meeting in Madrid. It was unexpected and was a point of big embarrassment for candidate St.Ange, his supporters, and the former Secretary-General Rifai and many others. He delivered an emotional speech before the election he was not allowed to compete in anymore. Emotional speech by Alain St.Ange at UNWTO Executive Council in 2017 after being disqualified as UNWTO candidate. Alain loves the press, he loves people and is a big supporter of the private travel and tourism industry. When he was Minister of Tourism for Seychelles, he started the Victoria Carnival, an event that brought carnivals and visitors from all parts of the world to this small island state. Carnivals, that paraded from Trinidad, Nottingham, Cologne to Rio de Janeiro in Seychelles are still talking about it. Unfortunately, St.Ange never had a chance to be voted for by UNWTO member countries. Africa was getting the short end of the stick was a major concern during the election, and it turned into a sad reality according to many. Back in 2017, 2 African leaders were trying to bring Africa to the world tourism stage, Dr. Walter Mazembe, the longest-serving African tourism minister at that time from Zimbabwe, and Alain St.Ange from Seychelles. The African Union endorsed Dr. Mazembe as the candidate for Africa, which was confirmed by Seychelles as well at the time. With 2 candidates from Africa, the chances for Africa to assign one of their own as Secretary-General became a real challenge. Zimbabwe under President Mugabe pushed the African Union to coerce Seychelles to not allow Alain St.Ange to run. The pressure on Seychelles was tremendous and threatened African sanctions. The Seychelles government gave in just minutes before the election and forcefully withdrew St.Ange from the election. This was a big embarrassment for candidate St.Ange, but also for UNWTO, and the integrity of the election process. Unfortunately, this was only one out of many problems of alarming developments that finally confirmed the Georgia candidate as Secretary-General for the UNWTO General Assembly in Chengdu, China. Africa had the short stick from the beginning, starting in 2017 when eTurboNews wrote, "Something stinks in Madrid." In the end, Mazembe made it to the number 2 slot and was defeated by Zarab Polilikashvili. This publication had reported about Zarab playing a foul game with favors and questionable promises to secure his votes. eTurboNews.com. Alain St.Ange felt he was treated badly by his own government and never stopped making his point. He sued his government and won. After he won his lawsuit, an appeal was filed and now he won even bigger. This all happened on Thursday, yesterday. The Supreme Court of Seychelles has today, August 12, 2021, delivered a judgment in favor of the case of ex-tourism minister, Alain St.Ange. Why Alain St.Ange will receive 7 million rupees for a lost UNWTO election. St.Ange, who campaigned tirelessly for the post, incurring huge personal financial loss in the process, trying to make himself the first African UNWTO Secretary-General. The decision to withdraw his candidature was taken by the government of Seychelles after severe pressure was brought to bear by the African Union, which threatened economic sanctions. The Seychelles president, therefore, cancelled the nomination of St.Ange when he was already attending the UNWTO Executive Council meeting in Madrid, 2 days before the election. After St.Ange returned home he went to court and was vindicated by the Supreme Court, presided over by Judge Melchior Vidot, when he was awarded damages in the sum of 164,396 rupees and 14 paise cents, approximately 12,366 United States dollars. This money did not even remotely cover the expenses St.Ange invested in campaigning for this election. He instructed his lawyers to appeal against the quantum of damages only. He also added pain, humiliation, and psychological damage that the incident caused him. After several years, the matter has finally been concluded before the Court of Appeal, the highest court in Seychelles. While the Attorney General had sought, on appeal, to have the case dismissed in its entirety, St.Ange had appealed against quantum. He noted candidly that the sum awarded at the Supreme Court level was barely enough to cover his filing fees, but did little to compensate for the tremendous expenses he had incurred during his campaign. The Attorney General on appeal tried, unsuccessfully, to plead that the government should be held to a different standard in law than a citizen in delictual actions. Ultimately, if their argument were to be successful, it would have the effect of making it harder for a citizen to bring a civil action against the state. Being one of the first of its kind in our jurisdiction, St.Ange's case today had the opposite effect following judgment, widening the scope for citizens to challenge decisions taken by the executive branch of government. The court yesterday increased the award for St.Ange to nearly 7 million rupees, effectively reimbursing most of his out-of-pocket expenses during his campaign period. This sum includes 1 million rupees in moral damage, one of the highest sums to be awarded in our jurisdiction for non-monetary damage to date. This will no doubt be a promising benchmark for claimants moving forward in similar causes of action. Mr. St.Ange was seen, understandably, leaving the courthouse yesterday in good spirits after 4 years battling out the matter in an adversarial context, alongside his jubilant team of Seychellois attorneys, comprising Mr. Kiran Shah, Mrs. Michelle St.Ange Ibrahim, and Mr. Frank Elizabeth. The state was represented by Mr. Stephen Knights. While Mr. St.Ange interacted amiably, as usual, with the gathered press, there was no comment by the Attorney General.